Okay guys, so it looked like everybody was having a hard time with the chapter 7 assignment, and a lot of people mentioned that it was hard for them or they spent a lot of hours working on it, and that was not my intention. Now, it will take you longer than it'll take me because I'm very used to retouching because I used to do it at a photography studio. But at the same time, when it's taking you that long, what I'm assuming is that you're painting and you're doing something, you're trying to make it work, trying to make it work, trying to make it work, and you spend a lot of time on it instead of erasing what you did and trying maybe a different tool and seeing if it gets you a better result. So what we're going for is something like this. I'm going to go back to the original and show you a couple of techniques. Now, I don't want to harm this original photo, so actually I do want to crop it first. So I want to get rid of all this stuff that I don't need. It's just going to make my life easier. So all these corners and things that I don't need, give us a little bit of headroom. I think that looks good because I don't want these torn corners here. And I think that works really well for me. So I'm going to make sure it doesn't say delete cropped pixels, commit that change, and there we go. Now I don't want to harm this original photo, so I'm going to make a copy of it and turn that original photo off so that I don't really mess with it. Then I have this top photo that I can call the Retouch Copy. And then above this, I'm going to create a new blank layer, and this is where I want to do all my retouching. Now, when you do retouching, always work with the easiest tool and then work your way up to the harder tools if you need them. So by far the easiest tool is a spot healing brush. All you have to do is make sure you've checked sample all layers and then go through each of these blemishes and paint, and hopefully it's going to paint it all out for you. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then you're going to need to erase it and try a harder tool that has a little bit more refinement. So it's looking pretty good right here. And we'll try this one. And that looks pretty good as well. But then I'm going to come down here to her arm, and it's going to look like there's a little paint stroke. So it looks like the spot healing brush isn't going to work in that instance. So I can either step back in history, or let's say I painted that, didn't notice it, and then I started working on his hair and her face and all this other stuff. Well, I can't go back in history. This is why we have this top retouching layer. So I can call this Fix Blemishes. Because what this does is you're painting on an empty layer, and you can erase any changes you've made. So I can grab my eraser tool, and I can erase that portion of it, and then I can try to redo it. So this gives me a chance to use maybe a better tool. So I'll try the healing brush tool. So I'll click and paint along her arm, and that looks a lot better. So I'll alt click here, or option click if you're on a PC. And once we or an option click if you're on a Mac. Once we have that all done, we just need to paint out the hair here. So again, we're going to work smarter, not harder. We're going to try the spot healing brush first, see what that does for us. And it actually doesn't do too bad of a job. Great. So then we can try the healing brush tool if we need to sort of heal these weird little areas in here. And then I think this one is going to give me a little bit of trouble, so I'm going to grab my clone stamp tool, which doesn't blend the pixels but allows you to just copy them directly, so I can kind of paint in that area where I think it's going to have a shadow and undo any mistakes I make. So there's a pretty good retouch or an edit. I can go ahead and alt click here to fix her little eyebrow, and if that doesn't work, then I'm going to come in here and change it to the spot healing brush or the healing brush tool. And sometimes you're going to have to zoom in, and you're really going to have to work with a small brush here. So I can alt click here and paint, and it should blend it in. And there we go. So now it's just a matter of adding a border and then burning her dress with the burn tool. And notice I changed mine to midtones and 11% because I just don't want it to be very strong. And I'm going to paint continuously. I'm not going to keep lifting my brush up, otherwise it'll cause weird layering problems with the paint. So I'm going to burn her dress to add some definition between her dress color and her skin tone. And I'm going to paint the whole thing and make sure there's not any bright areas. As you can see, if I don't paint, it looks a little bit weird and splotchy. But if you paint the whole thing, it's going to look really good. So hopefully that helps you with this particular chapter and retouching. So when you do your own photos for your relatives, or if you retouch photos for a profession, hopefully that workflow and that process with the layers and making sure we don't harm the original and using blank layers so that we can easily erase them makes sense.